Hi there. Thanks again for tuning into this week's edition of your Wheel and Anchor weekly newsletter. The big story of the week, of course, the federal government's bailout of Air Canada to the tune of some $5 billion. I've been reading a number of articles about that, as I'm sure you have, and certainly the whole topic is very controversial. You might recall in a newsletter I produced just over a year ago, I was quite critical of the idea that we should bail out the airlines. And of course, a lot has happened over the course of the past year, and the situation is very much more complicated. And while I still stand behind many of the facts and figures and the opinion that I had over a year ago, I think that few of us probably expected that we would be in as much uncertainty about the future of the pandemic and the future of the airline industry as we are today. And of course, over the course of the year, running an airline costs several $billion dollars, and for obvious reasons, they have been precluded from flying as they normally would and returning to any degree of normalcy. And by the looks of things, it's going to take quite a while longer until we can start flying as we were back in the glory days, if you will, of 2019 and prior to that. And so I think that it's important that we put things into perspective. And, you know, as I'm certainly one of Air Canada's most vocal critics, having worked with the airline for a great number of years and have found lots of challenges in doing so, not only in my position as someone in the travel industry, but also as a frequent flyer, as you can well imagine. And that being said, it's pretty clear that without a robust airline industry in Canada, it would be a very difficult thing to, for us as Canadians in the far-flung parts of the country, to be able to lead sort of the quality of life that we can. And, you know, it's easy for those of us that live in places like Toronto or Montreal or Vancouver, the bigger cities in Canada, to sort of moan and complain about all the high airfares. And they're certainly, to some extent, not justified. But the fact is that there are still quite a few of us that live in places like Yarmouth, Nova Scotia, or Smithers, British Columbia, and they rely quite heavily on Air Canada and other carriers to provide a bit of a lifeline for those communities. And so, you know, that's, I guess, part of the pros and cons of being in Canada is in general, is that, you know, we look out for each other, and you know, we want people to be able to have as high a quality of life in those places as they do in our bigger urban centers. So, and of course, there's a cost to that, and no doubt it is costly for airlines to operate to all those places. I think that one of the benefits of this bailout is, of course, that, you know, Air Canada has now announced that finally they're going to refund passengers for airfares paid, but they could, of course, not use. And that does apply to many of our members, and there'll be more information coming from us as we figure out exactly how we're supposed to process those refunds. A whole other story, let me tell you. And of course, the fact that the government is now taking an equity stake, and again, that in and of itself is certainly a controversial question. But back in our March 27th newsletter issue, I posted an article from the Globe and Mail from an industry insider who really talked about the fact that the bailout is not the only solution to the challenges that we have in the aviation industry in Canada. There's a whole number of factors. The system is in fact in need of a complete overhaul. I think that all of us will agree that the cost of flying within Canada and internationally is quite a bit higher than in other places around the world. And I think that there's that doesn't necessarily need to be the case. There's a way to restructure the industry that benefits us as Canadians, those of us who live in these smaller, more remote communities, but also those of us who live in the major urban centers that would provide for a more efficient air transportation system, more competition, and perhaps better pricing, while at the same time keeping all of the international and domestic routes intact, and frankly allowing more people to fly into the country. Because let's face it, Canada has underplayed its tourism card for many years, and the fact that it's so costly for airlines to fly to our major airports is another factor. So as I say, many facets to this argument, and I would encourage you to read up on it. If you're somebody who is an air traveler who frequently uses Air Canada or any other airlines, it's important to understand all the issues, understand what's at stake, and make your voice heard. I'm certainly doing that on an ongoing basis. I'd love to get your feedback on it. And let's see what happens as we move forward. In the meantime, we had a great webinar a couple of days ago about our rescheduled Sicily, Malta, and the Aeolian Islands trip. You'll find the replay in the link below. Coming up this week on Thursday, April 22nd, is our Fjords of Norway program, once again rescheduled from this year until next. The spectacular coastline of Norway as we cruise up it on the original Hurtigruten coastal steamer route. So find out about that trip in our webinar next week. And following that, we have a series of other programs that are coming out, and I'm excited as well to launch our first 5x5 program in Scandinavia, which will be coming out in early May. So lots in store. Take care. Times are tough, but stay healthy, and I look forward to catching up with you again next week.